Ladies and gentlemen, this is Nate Crespo, your host for today and forever, and welcome back to another episode of the Lawyers in the Making podcast, where it is my job to focus on the unique journeys to the law and law school of professionals in the legal field and law students. But let's talk about what we're doing today. Today we have another spectacular guest. He's a Tulane University Law School graduate and currently works as the principal attorney at Loyd J Bourgeois Attorney at Law. He's held past positions as an attorney at Dickerson Law Firm and as an attorney at Reck, Meeks, and Treadaway. Excited to have him on the podcast today, Mr. Loyd Bourgeois. Welcome to the podcast. How are we doing today? Before going any further, I'd like to say a quick word about the sponsor of this podcast, Rhetoric. Back in episode 25, I had the privilege of having the CEO, Luke Yingling, on the podcast, and ever since that episode, fell in love with the product. Rhetoric takes user briefs and motions and compares them against the text of opinions written by judges to identify ways to tailor their arguments to better persuade the judges handling their cases. Rhetoric's focus on persuasion and helps users find new ways to improve their odds of success through more persuasive arguments. Know more, win more. I was able to see a demo of the product, and its cutting-edge technology and fascinating features make for a product I am proud to sponsor, and further shows the new digital era the field of law has been entering thus far on my journey doing this podcast. If you decide to book a demo, let them know Nate sent you. Be sure to check them out in the show notes below or at userhetoric.com. One word, userhetoric.com. Now, back to the show.
Hey, doing great, Nate. Thanks for having me.
No problem, Loyd, no problem. Now, before we get started, Loyd, can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm an attorney down in South Louisiana, office maybe about 30 miles or so west of New Orleans, kind of in the hurricane danger zone here. We have a small firm. I think we have 8 total people right now. Handle primarily personal injury and disability cases. But over the years, we've kind of done a bit of everything. Being a small firm in a small town, knowing a lot of folks here, you get asked to do a lot of things. And so we kind of, want to help. It's hard to say no, but we love our position. We love our community here. We do a lot here in the community. I have 3 kids. One in high school is a junior, one going to LSU, he's a freshman in college, and then a middle schooler. And so they're all between academics and sports and various other activities and running a small firm. Our schedule's pretty booked, but we do try to hang out with cool folks like you, Nate, and do podcasts and learn marketing and business development and native to here in South Louisiana as well.
Well, first I have to say congratulations on the family. I know I'm late, but I always like to give the congratulations before. And first I have to shout out your wife, Lindy, for actually setting this up in the first place. She filled out the Google Sheet. It has since been deceased, but that Google Sheet was up for such a long time. And I totally forgot about it. And I looked at it and I saw the week before she had put in everything, and I was like, oh my God, like someone actually used it. So
Yeah.
shout out to her, because that was amazing. That was the best thing I've ever seen in my life.
She marketing is kind of her hobby, and so she's always on the lookout for things. And when she sees cool things and cool people doing awesome things, she likes to participate and help. And she was like, "You're gonna go on Nate's podcast, doing great things."
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate those kind words from her. I appreciate you saying that I'm cool. Thank you very much. Some people disagree. It's all right. I'll convince them one day.
Well, listen, we all have our naysayers, man.
The haters are always out there waiting for us.
Right. That's how you know you're doing good things.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking earlier today. But let's go back. 2002. You're at LSU. Go Tigers, of course. And you eventually end up that next year at Tulane University Law School. Now, simply put, Loyd, why'd you go to law school?
And it's I kind of know why, but it wasn't it wasn't the traditional pathway. I have an engineering degree from LSU. really did well in engineering classes, wasn't like I was struggling or anything. And I really liked them, enjoyed them. But then I went work and it's like, it just wasn't for me. It wasn't exciting. It wasn't fun. Um, I, I was doing environmental engineering work at some chemical manufacturing facilities, and a lot of it was reporting and dealing with permitting issues. And it seemed like every time anything came up, they were like, we gotta call the lawyer, we gotta talk to the lawyer, we gotta do this, lawyer's gotta know this. What does the lawyer say? And I was like, man, this lawyer sounds like he's got a great job. And so I think I just said, maybe I just go be the lawyer. They seem to get all the interesting stuff. We're just taking notes here and passing it on essentially. And so yeah, I went to law school, decided to go to law school, went to Tulane, has a great environmental law program. And the rest is history. And so that's kind of why I went to law school, came out, graduated the year of Hurricane Katrina. So had our first son in May of 2005, graduated in May of 2005, took the bar exam in July of 2005, got hit by Hurricane Katrina in August of 2005. So since then, just kind of worked for some firms. I think you mentioned a few of them. Didn't really like the first one. It was kind of the name partner there, who was the first on the letterhead. He was like a yeller, screamer, throw stuff at you. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm not going to be treated like this. No, I didn't go to law school for this. So I left there, went to do some like hazardous waste management for the Navy for a bit, and then got another law firm job, did that for a few years, a lot of just Hurricane Katrina litigation type work. Came home one day and told my wife, who was pregnant with our third child, like, I think I want to start my own firm.
I have to ask, how did she react to that?
I mean, I'm still here.
Of course. So clearly it worked out. But I want to
Yeah.
go back all the way. First year of law school. Some people hate it. Some people love it. Some people really do enjoy it. It's like one of their favorite years of their
Yeah.
life. How was it for you?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I hated it or didn't hate it. It was just, to me, it was just another step in the progression. I was married at the time. My wife and I got married like right after we graduated college and before law school. So I was married, so that kind of gave me a little levity, not getting too sucked into the, oh my God, this is law school way of life. But it was interesting, it was definitely a different, in some ways it was a different way of learning, but it wasn't such a struggle, because for me, coming from an engineering program, I was used to kind of hitting the books and studying and walking into class and being like, oh my God, I hope this teacher doesn't call on me. It's a professor doesn't call on me, because I have no idea what this differential equation ultimately results into. And praying you kind of could struggle your way through it. Then law school was much of the same. So it wasn't like that big of a culture shock to me, or, a shock to my system. But yeah, the thing that was difficult was just no test. You don't know where you stand until the end, which is pretty difficult.
So from that, I have to ask, because clearly here we have a very unique perspective, and I always love that, because it is the mantra of this podcast that there is no straight path to law school. There is no straight path to the law. There's only your unique journey. And Loyd, he's a listener. He told me before he's listened to a couple of podcasts, so he's probably heard me say that 6 trillion times. But I just got to keep putting that message out, because I feel it is the most important message that I could do based on the interviews that I have. So, how did having an engineering degree, and I know you talked a little bit about it, but I want to take a little deeper dive into it. How did
Mhm.
having an engineering degree sort of shape your perspective going throughout law school and even further on going throughout just being around the law and doing it?
Yeah, I mean, they're very similar in their approach, but because you are typically getting a disparate set of facts or information and trying to solve a problem, right? Whether it's a legal problem or some kind of technical problem, there's some issue and you're trying to solve it. And so at its core, at both of them's core, they're, to me, they're very similar in that vein. And so I would say that, early on, you don't really appreciate those similarities so much because one is like math and one is like a lot of reading. But, you know, and when you're used to doing a lot of math and you got to do a lot of reading, it's a little different, but it is still just figuring out, taking some disparate information from various places and trying to figure out how can we get to a resolution. Um, and that has really, once I kind of started thinking about it in those terms, it's really served me well over the course of my career as well. And be able to use that engineering background to kind of go in a logical progression through legal problems. We're gonna focus on this and then that and then this and then this, and kind of break it down into a process, just like they do in engineering school.
So I know you said before that your firm focuses a lot on personal injury and disability issues, and but you have also done a lot of things outside of that. But
Yeah,
how did you sort of figure out that the personal injury disability path was for you?
yeah. So, like I mentioned, I was working at a small firm, I like the Diedrichson firm. We're doing a lot of hurricane litigation, like Hurricane Katrina litigation at the time. So this is all just like property damage and some environmental litigation. So like oil field remediation, cleanup, trying to figure out who pays for it, who's responsible for it. Um, in like 2008, 2009 timeframe, I had a phone call from my grandmother, and she's like, "Hey, I need you to talk to your cousin." Um, it was my grandmother's sister's daughter, so it's like my second cousin. And she's like, she's something's going on. I don't really know too much. Um, so I called her up and she said, "Hey, I'm dealing with this like long-term disability insurance and social security, and they kicked me off, and I don't know why." And what's important is she, at that point, had been diagnosed with brain cancer, and she had already had like multiple procedures, and she hadn't worked for a while because she was recovering and dealing with this, despicable disease. And she's like, I don't even know what to tell you. I don't know why they kicked me off. And so I was like, well, look, I'll figure it out. Just give me some paperwork, give me some documents. Who do I need to talk to? And then I just kind of, got her to sign some stuff to give me access and just got into her case and really just kind of just started figuring it out. Eventually was able to kind of get her benefits back, get her on disability, and through that process, really saw um, one how important it was for her and her family to have this, and how much it helped them, and how just even though it's family, how appreciative they were, and you don't always get that when you're working on property damage claims sometimes, or not for people individually. And then two, just I started like blogging in early 2000, 8, 9-ish, kind of set up a free like WordPress.org blog, a WordPress.com blog, and just started kind of documenting what I was learning. And it helped me kind of figure it out. Um, and people started reading it and contacting me from all over the country, like, "Hey, we can't find anybody who knows anything about this long-term disability stuff, but you seem to know. Can you help us? Can you help me? Can you help me? And it just kind of blossomed into me saying, yeah, look, I really enjoy helping folks. It really gives you, as you said earlier, like the warm and fuzzies. It gives you warm and fuzzies, man, to help people, and know that you're making a true difference in their life. That they can feed their family, that they can, you know, go to the doctor without worrying that it's not going to be paid and their doctor's going to see them, because they have insurance. And this from there, it's kind of a natural progression to start helping folks who are injured as well. Because you start helping people who are disabled, you start learning a lot of medical terminology, medical issues, understanding medicine, and then do a good job for them. And like, hey, this happened to my husband, my daughter, my coworker, my friend, my neighbor. Can you help them? And it just kind of comes together for you, or at least it did for us. And we kind of just started handling both of those types of cases.
Well, first I'd like to say I love hearing the warm and fuzziness because that's something I always say all the time, and I love that you're picking up on it because it is a real feeling. It is a real visceral feeling that someone can feel when helping people and giving them stuff that is valuable to them and that can help them improve their lives. And I think this goes to even bigger idea of the human aspect of the law. As I talk about all the time, when you go through law school, I haven't been there before, but I've talked to people who have been there. And it's very much just taking plain text and applying the facts of the case to the laws and the rules that are in place, see if they're applicable. But never once do you really learn that you're genuinely helping people, that when you go to clients, like these clients are actual people, they're actual human beings. So can you talk about the human aspect of the law? I know you spoke about the warm and fuzziness, but can you talk a little bit more about that human aspect of the law and how much it's had an impact on you and your career so far?
Yeah, I think it's kind of probably the biggest thing, for us in the type of work we do. Um, we don't always get paid the most. Sometimes we go, the disability and injury work is all contingency fee. So you don't, sometimes you get paid for years, and if you lose, you don't get anything. But I can legitimately say there's not one case that we have taken, even the ones we've lost, that we would not take again because of the human impact of it. Um, we can't always know at the outset how the facts are going to come out, but throughout the case, when you're sitting down with your client at their home, going to the grocery store with them, kind of learning about them, uh, showing them that you care, that goes so far. Of course, they want to win. They want some financial justice for the harms that they suffered. But win or lose, you want to know that you've given it your all, and you want your client to feel that you've given it your all. And that's the biggest part of it, because you can win big cases, but if folks don't like you, folks don't want to refer people to you, they don't like the way you interact with them, um, you're not, at least for us at our firm, you're not going to have that same kind of impact. It will just be about money. And so much about, to us, the law is not about money. It's about making a mark on the people we come in contact with.
I think it even goes back to the idea of sort of authenticity, that when you're authentically going to people and you're doing all that stuff and you're really helping them, you're giving it your absolute all to make sure these people can meet the ends that they need to meet. I think it's such a wonderful thing, and it just further shows that idea. What you put out into the universe, you get back in some way, shape, or form. When you go to that client and you help them out very much, they'll make that referral to another person when they hear they're having some legal problems. And I think that's such an important message for people to hear, how important it is to be authentic, how important it is when you interact with people, you put a smile on your face, and you make sure they feel that they're being listened to, that they're being attended to. But
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of it's kind of weird for me to say it, but we go to high school. I go to high school football because my daughter's on the dance team, so I go to the games. We live in a small town. You go to the grocery. You go. I mean, just today I was at lunch. Um, Clients always walk up to us. Like I've seen people do that to doctors, and I've it's kind of weird, but they like, oh hey Lloyd, man, how you doing today? It's good to see you. How's your business? I just want to tell you what's going on with my life. And you've only known them for this brief moment in time with their case, but they have this connection, and you have it. I remember them all, and I ended up having a conversation with a guy today at lunch for like 20, 30 minutes who just, came up and just started talking to me because we represented him in the past. And you don't get that if you're not authentic, if you're not trying to if you're not doing this job for the right reasons.
I think that's such an important point that you're doing your jobs for the right reason. It's very much, oh, I don't, I couldn't, I can get philosophical right now. Start talking about Immanuel Kant. That's what he all talks about, that the best
Yeah.
moral choices is to make sure you're doing it for the right reasons, not for, the action itself, that sort of thing. But something you were saying before that I'm real interested right now, you keep talking about figuring it out. You did it in law school, transitioning from the engineering degree to now doing legal stuff. And you sort of were able to take those frameworks from engineering and put it into the law and figure it out that way. You started your blog and you were able to then further figure out things, get some more clients, and really, take a deep dive into the legal world that's out there. And I want to ask what sort of tips you have for people in terms of figuring it out. What sort of things should they do in order to figure it out?
I don't know. It's one of those things, like you ask someone like what makes Michael Jordan great. If you ask him, he's like, I don't know, I'm just a basketball player, right? Just do what comes natural to me. Um, and it to me, that just comes natural to me to just, okay, see a challenge, just try to figure it out. And one of the things that I always like to keep in mind, and I tell myself is none of this is new. It's all been done somewhere, maybe not by us. Someone else has figured it out. So if they've figured it out, we should be able to figure it out. We might not be able to do it perfectly, but we can give it a go. We can call that person. Hey, I saw you did X. I'm about to embark on X. What kind of help can you give me? Kind of like you're doing here. Like what what's the what's a pathway to law school? What's the different pathways to see how others have done it? Because none of this is reinventing the wheel. It's already there. Somebody's typically done it. It's just that we might not have. And I kind of like to keep that framework because it tells me that it can be done. And we just need to figure it out. My team here sometimes gets a little frustrated because I'm always like, well, let's figure it out. What have you done? Let's try it. Let's do this. Let's do that. And it's a lot of us. We want answers. We want to know that it's going to work before we're willing to take the leap and try. I don't mind trying, and I think that's important sometimes. Is just, hey, try. If it doesn't work, there's nothing that tells you have to keep going. You can stop. You can try to swim across the lake. If you can't make it all the way, turn around and go back.
Oh, Lord, you're speaking my language right now, I have to say. Because one of my favorite things in the world more than anything in this world is I love old books. I love really, really old books. And the sentiment you're putting out right now, the fact that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We really don't. There's so much information out there. And that's why I love reading old books, is that when I read them and I see some concepts or some principles that I enjoy, and that I could actually apply to my own life and that I see out there in the world, I'm like, oh my God, people have been talking about, such and such topic for thousands of years. They still talk about it today.
Great.
And that information is just available in this book. It's already here. People have been trying to figure it out for ages. So I think that's
Yeah.
such an important point to make. And now I want to talk about what you do right now. You have your own firm, and every time I talk to people, and you've probably heard it on the podcast before, when people start their own firm, there's some struggles that go into it. There's some ups and downs. So can you talk about some of the struggles you may have faced when you were opening your law firm and how that experience was?
Yeah. So Um, I mentioned earlier when I opened my firm, we opened in September of 2010. My third child was born in November of 2010. Um, but I kind of planned for it to happen for a bit and knew this is what I wanted to do and planned to kind of struggle, um, but knew that I could figure it out eventually. But I gave myself, I planned beforehand to give myself the ability to not have any income for a little bit, even with a new child. And then especially in those early years, say 2010 to 2017-ish, I was just a solo firm, just myself. So I only had to make enough for me. Um, and that was a deliberate choice because I wanted to be heavily involved in my children's lives. So that meant like getting them on the bus, going to the parent teacher conferences, going to lunch with them, getting them off the bus, coaching them in sports, bringing them everywhere. And especially when they were younger, giving my wife some time, with herself instead of just always with the children. Um, and so it was a deliberate choice to not try to get too much work. Uh, and I think that knowing that was kind of my choice also helped me figure it out and figure out the best way I work. When do I work best? Help me kind of start compartmentalizing a bit, which I think is important. Um, Especially as a lawyer, and especially if you're authentic and you're meeting with people and hearing all their struggles and their stories, you don't want to take those home with you. They're not yours. They're not your burdens. But it's important to be able to feel that with them, but then to also leave it at work so you can go enjoy that time with your kids and coach those teams. And then, 2017, as I just brought on an assistant. I was like, okay, if I'm starting to ring too much, I need somebody to just do some basic stuff. And then from there, we started kind of putting in plans in place. Okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And then probably since 2019, we've been kind of on a pretty upward growth trajectory, adding folks every year, kind of expanding the number of cases we have. So it was a struggle to an extent just because I was by myself, but I don't look at it as a struggle. I just look at it as, because look, people have really struggled, and to call it a struggle is really a disservice to what it is, to me, to people who are really struggling. Because I had a house. I wasn't worried about food. I wasn't worried about my kids' health or my wife's health. Um, it was challenging at times, but it was also part of the journey of making us and our firm what it is today.
Well, I love to hear the upward trajectory. It's the top is coming, Lloyd. I can feel it. I could feel it. I absolutely can. And I think something that's so amazing is the way that you frame it, that you have to embrace the struggle, even if you may see it, even if you don't even see it as a struggle, that it's simply just the way that you frame things is how you view on life and how you act on life. And I think the mindset that you're holding right now and that you're presenting to the audience is absolutely amazing. Anyone can take from this that it's such a wonderful thing in the way that you frame things, that it's so, so important the way that you view things, because it's how you act. It has to do with what's going on in your head, that voice in your head that's always talking to you. The way that you look at life is just so, so important. And I also have to say, similarly, my dad, he owns a process serving company, Preferred Process Servers. For anyone looking for the process serving needs, say I have to shamelessly plug it a little bit because he told me to.
It's another sponsorship opportunity.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying in the tri-state area if you're looking. But he had actually when I was younger and we were all growing up, he had actually moved his whole office closer to the house so he could be near us, so he can put us on the bus just like yourself, coach our teams. He was pretty much my coach throughout my whole life. which for better or worse was fun. I enjoyed it, but there's a lot of times it's like, come on, Nate. I'm like,
Yeah,
sometimes with another coach I might get away with it, but with my dad not
right.
so much.
Yeah.
But I have to ask, it's a big risk to go out on your own because you're taking a big risk there. What advice would you have to people in terms of what sort of mindset you should put yourself in order to make that risk?
To make that, yeah, I never really looked at it as a risk because to me, what's more risky, betting on someone or some company you don't know, or just betting on yourself, you know? Playing the lottery is a risk. You don't know if those numbers are going to hit. To me, that's the same as, committing to some firm who may fold up tomorrow. I'm going to still be here. It might not be the exact way I want to be here, but I know I'm going to be here, and I'm gonna give it my all no matter what. I don't know that anyone else will for me. They may do it for themselves, but they may not do it for me. The only one who's really gonna give it their all for me is probably gonna be me. And so I like to kind of use that to say, like, to me, it wasn't really a risk. I knew I could do it. I knew I would figure it out. I knew maybe there would be some challenging times, but I knew we could grow from them. I knew that it would work. I knew that I would have time with my kids. And I just kept that kind of reference. Like, okay, if I don't have a client, if I don't have something to work on today, I can go home and help my wife, and that'll help my life. I can go cook, I can go clean. That'll make our whole life better. And so while the firm might not be doing what we wanted to do, there's another aspect to life that we can work on. If the firm's working really well, then we can focus on that for a bit. And so to me, I don't know if that answered your question, but I never really look at it as a risk, which I think I still look at things like, okay, I it'll work out. We'll figure it out.
I think I love what you just said there. The fact that you should always bet on yourself. That is potentially, it actually is. I don't want to say potentially. It actually is the best bet you could ever make because it gives you so much self-belief. It gives you that vision. And when you're so focused on that vision, you have all that self-belief, it's gonna happen. It's absolutely gonna happen. It is just a matter of time. It always is. But talking about the two aspects of your life, you have your work life, you have your family life. What sorts of things did you do to ensure that you were balancing that and doing that balancing act very well? Because clearly you yourself have done it tremendously well.
Yeah. So I think when you commit to stuff, like I committed to coaching. From the time my oldest son was 3, we coached the soccer team. Well, hey, you got to show up because these other parents and kids are counting on you to be there. So you can't overextend yourself. You can't say, oh, I got to work a little later. No, like somebody else is counting on you. You got to show up. And so, I build those things into my schedule and then try to, make sure that for the hour or two before that, you got to get everything done. Make those calls, get the brief file. Don't wait till the last minute, because that's where you start bringing in a lot of unnecessary stress, at least for me. So we try to get everything done quickly, have everything scheduled. And like I said earlier, I'm very good at compartmentalizing. And so and my wife kind of hates this because she's always worked from home, even before work from home was a thing. She started working from home in 2005. And so she just works, sitting on the couch, she's working at night in bed, she's working on car trips, she's working. For me, when I got home, I was home. Work was at work. I had an office and I kept an office always because I was like, I need an office because I can work at my office. But when I get home, the different compartment, I'm not working anymore. And so that's for me how I've always kind of kept it separated and able to maintain both things. And some nights I'm like, man, I wish I didn't have to get up so early and go into the office because I'll get here at 4 a.m. because I know if I get here, I will actually work. Whereas if I get up and go to the desk at the house, I'm not going to work.
Yeah, I think the fact that environments are extremely, extremely important.
Yeah,
I've heard on a lot of podcasts, a lot of legal podcasts as well, when people start their own firms, they'll get an office as small, it could just be a
yeah,
box, but it's just sort of that tricking your mind.
it
So to
is.
enter that room, you know exactly what you're there to do. You're not really
Yeah,
looking to do something else where it's even myself throughout my college career whenever I have to study for a test, I can't study in my house. There's way too
right.
much going on. I have way too many things that I could possibly be doing. I'm like, oh,
Yep,
there's 10 dishes in the sink. Let me go do them.
that's right. Yeah.
But
I'm the same way, man. I would in law school and college, like in college, I go to the computer lab and work on the engineering problems. Um, in law school, I was married, but I could not study at home. So I would stay at the law library late, study. But once I left, that was it. I was done. But I could be committed to staying at the library to whatever time. But once I got home, I wasn't reading anymore. I wasn't doing any more outlining or anything like that. I was going to be focused on what it was in front of me. I had a saying, a friend of mine told me it really hit home with him when we were in law school. He was kind of struggling. He was from the Midwest. He had lost his dad. He was really struggling with being in New Orleans. I was like, and he just, kept talking about all these other places he could be. And I said, well, look, what you got to focus on is you got to be where you are. Just be there. If you want to go to the Midwest, be in the Midwest. But if you're going to be in New Orleans, you got to be in New Orleans. You got to be committed to Tulane. You got to be committed to living here. Because if you're not, that's when you're going to start finding that unhappiness. You're going to start introducing the stress into your life. And so I kind of like take that to heart. Like if I'm going to be home, I want to be at home, doing home things. I'm going to be in the office and do office things. I'm in the courtroom, I'm going to do courtroom things. And it's kind of that mantra's also kind of served me well and helped me keep things compartmentalized in the right place.
so, Lloyd, I have to say this, but like for someone who probably doesn't view themselves as this, you're tremendously philosophical in everything that you're saying, in that being in what environment you're a part of, being present in the moment, being able to just take in that moment, not think about anything else, not think about work. When you're at home, you're at home, you're with your children, you're doing whatever. And I think that's so, so important. It is so philosophical. It is like so amazingly philosophical. And I love it so much just because you don't view, do you view yourself as
No,
philosophical?
the engineering background.
So, and it just goes to show the sort of mindset, how important having that mindset is, being able to car- compartmentalize. Wow, that was have a
Yeah.
time with that word. Um, but Lloyd, we're down to the last five questions. So the first of the five questions, I've been talking about this on the past couple episodes, but I felt that the law is moving in a certain direction. We're on the precipice of a new era. A lot more people are moving towards technology, moving towards AI technologies, many things like that. And a word that is a sort of, I guess it's a token word at this point on the internet, but something of a tech stack. The sort of products or
Yeah.
software products that you use in your practice to help you. So, do you have any suggestions of products that you use throughout your practice that you advise other people to use as well?
Well, I mean, we use, the basics, Word documents, MS Word, MS Office products. But we also use FileVine to kind of as our case management platform. We it allows you to do so much more with a much smaller team because your task flows are automated. You have task flows in there. Your documents are there. They pre-populate. That's just I wouldn't say it wasn't a game change because we even had a different case management CRM prior to FileVine that we used, but it really and it doesn't really help me much because as I tell you, I don't work from home, but other people do. And, the other thing is like if they want to go on a trip or their family's going, their husband's going out of town and they want to go with them, they can access everything, through the cloud, and it's pretty seamless. No one would know you're not in office. So we use that. We have VoIP phones like Ring Central. And so they can get calls wherever they are, to their office number. We use Slack, just to kind of as an internal messaging here at the office and keep track of kind of calls and tasks and text and everything. Because, like you say, everything's so automated these days. Clients will text and they can text your phone, or they can text with Filevine, they can text Filevine, they can text our Ring Central numbers. And so it's kind of hard to keep track of all those things. But we have Slack set up to kind of be the middleman for stuff to make sure nothing gets missed. We kind of integrate it all with Zapier to make sure things, if they happen in one place, we don't want to have to do like dual data entry, dual stuff. So we use Zapier to say like, hey, if this happens over here, make sure it also happens over here and over here and over here. That way we can be confident that things are getting to where they need to be without us actually having to do them. So that's kind of, I would say, our basic tech stack.
Nice.
Yeah.
It was a sufficient answer. You gave a lot of great recommendations. I love Slack very much. It's one of my favorite applications out there. And I love Slack even more because the CEO, when they were first starting the company, had sent out this letter to the whole entire company. It's one of the best articles I've ever read in my life. I always want to suggest it because literally, like in terms of like marketing and business and
I have to
entrepreneurial.
go look it up. What does it say?
So basically it's we don't make saddles. So he's explaining to the company, what Slack is and what the vision is and how to differentiate itself from other competitors. But the thing was there was no competitors at the time. What they were doing was very much completely new, brand new
Yeah.
in terms of helping teams figure out and communicate to each other. And so basically he used the example of horse saddles. So this person, he's selling horse saddles. And if you went out there and be like, hey, come buy my horse saddle, someone's going to be like, not really interested. But instead, he reframes it. He said, no, we sell horseback riding. So we want to support the horseback riders. So it's sort of that concept that
Yeah.
I honestly, I read that article like once a week, just
Wow.
to make sure it's in my mind at all moments because
I have to go look it up if it's that groundbreaking and important to you.
it definitely was, but I literally I have it in my notes, like in my phone notes, and the
Uh,
title of the note is the Holy Bible. I think it is the
yeah.
Holy Bible. Um, but fourth to last bit, speaking, articles, but speaking of reading things, let's talk about books. Live on the Lawyers in the Making podcast. Lloyd, what are your book recommendations for the people out there? It doesn't have to be about the law, just some of your favorite books, something you give a gift to someone.
I mean, I really like Simon Sinek, like Leaders Eat Last. That's good stuff. Helps you, understand like your place, really. What are we trying to do here? Um, I read a lot of business books, marketing, mindset type stuff, business. Like we read Traction, which kind of has a series, a whole program and process, and it helps us kind of conceptualize, okay, how can we run this more as a business while also keeping it as a law firm? From the legal side, I really like this book called Trial by Human, Nick Rowley. He's a pretty famous plaintiff's attorney, and it's kind of his method, his kind of, I guess, philosophical bent on it. It's a lot of what we talked about earlier, and it really struck me because that's kind of how I think already. And then, I mean, I don't know. There's so many good books. One that I like. We did it as a team. It was called the Six Types of Working Genius, It's more like a personality type of book. It helps you kind of see the people around you, what are their strengths. It's not necessarily like it's not like a disc profile or a Myers-Briggs type of categorization. It just says like, hey, these are the things that you're going to be good at. These are the things that you can do, but don't necessarily always give you the most energy. And then these are the things that, yeah, you can do them, but you don't really like it. And like it really hit home for me because it said like, I was not good at what was it? Enablement or tenacity, but I was good at invention and no, I'm sorry, galvanizing. So I wasn't good at galvanizing. That was the one. And that's true. I'm not like a rah-rah type of person, which is kind of a galvanizer. But I was good at like coming up with ideas and being like, okay, we will figure it out. We can invent this, we can figure it out. And once we get it going, like I move on to the next thing. Like, wait, we got it going. So I don't see it to completion because we have others that do that. And I was like, that makes a lot of sense. And I had my team do it and it kind of pegged us all pretty well. So I thought it's a quick read.
I got some books to the right of me here as always. And I love this is one of my favorite business books, The
Yeah.
Lean Startup. I always recommend that. I'm just about finishing it, and it's been a very good read. I've been learning a lot. I'm very
Yeah.
into entrepreneurship, so I was told that if I want to be an entrepreneur one day, this is like a required reading. So I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Once you tell me it's required reading, I'm buying the book and then I'm reading. Um, but third to last question here. You've probably been anticipating this one, but what are the types of things that you consume, not food, on a daily basis? Either that be social media, so Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Reddit, YouTube, Substack, definitely forgetting one.
Yeah.
Um,
I listen to podcasts. I walk my dog in the morning. Probably 45 minutes or so an hour. I usually listen to a podcast. Um, Typically some type of true crime or criminal defense type of podcast. I don't do any criminal defense work. I never have, and it just fascinates me. Um, I don't know, I love listening to that stuff. And I listen to a lot of, legal type podcasts, things like you. Um, there's this one's called Hostage to Heroes or Sorry Dalamate. It's a kind of trial, uh, trial consultant stuff, which is really good. They're usually short, like 20 minutes or so. So that's good, quick things. Serial, I listened to that Serial Box. I mean, it hasn't been, that's an old one, but yeah, I listened to that a long time ago. I think that probably got most people hooked on podcasts because it was so well done. Um, and it's kind of the standard bearer for podcasts, but I do like that type of, approach, that documentary style storytelling that takes, you know, multiple episodes to get through and figure it out. And
I mean, the Serial podcast was what inspired me in the first place to think about law school. So that's like that gets my golden stamp of recommendation. Adnan
yeah,
Syed, he got out of jail a couple months ago. So
yeah, I saw that.
it was like the story was like it was like I was like, oh my God, I felt like I was a part of it. I was like, I remember this all the way back in high school listening to this and like going through it all. And I remember they gave us like the teacher was like, you have to listen to like an episode a week. I ended up listening to the whole thing in one night. I just finished the whole thing. I remember like talking to my dad about it. I was like, this is insane. Like, how is no one talking about this? So it totally blew
Yeah,
my mind. So that's an OG of podcasting right there. But
right.
will go down forever as one of my
Yeah.
favorites.
And then if there's sports on, I'll watch that. I mean, I kind of disappointed in my hometown basketball team right now. They got blown out last night. We have the draft tonight. I'll probably go home and watch that. And big college football and baseball fan. Well, I like watching LSU and anything. Um, so if that's on, we'll typically watch that as well.
And so favorite football team, is it the Saints?
No, like the
Oh,
Tigers, LSU Tigers.
oh,
If
okay,
I had to
okay.
pick between the two, it'd definitely be the Tigers. Now, if we're just talking pro, yes, obviously Saints.
And then baseball team, which one is that?
Um, I've always liked the Rangers,
Okay.
uh, which they just won the World Series last year, so that was pretty cool. We don't have a hometown team here in New Orleans. A lot of folks in New Orleans like either the Braves or the Cubs because that was the two TV networks you could get that had baseball games on back in, the day. Um, but I had an uncle that lived in the Dallas area, and we'd go visit, and we'd always go to a Rangers game, and just kind of got connected to them. Now my kids love the Cardinals.
Mm,
Uh, my father-in-law is a big Cardinals fan.
mm.
Similarly to the Braves and Cubs, he grew up at a time where there was not many radio signals, and he could only get Cardinals radio at night. And he would listen to Cardinals games. He became a Cardinals fan, and he passed that on to my kids, and they love the Cardinals. So
Well, that's very interesting. But it all connects back. It all has a reason. The
yeah,
radio, listening to the radio, that's like very archaic nowadays. But I,
yeah,
I still recommend it. I always who doesn't love the radio? Come on. It's podcasting before podcasting. Uh,
yeah.
but second to last question. You're working at your firm, but you're juggling life well. But what does an ideal Friday night and Sunday morning look for Lloyd?
So Friday night's pretty easy. I mean, we've kind of done this for, I don't know, a long time now. We typically just hang out with our neighbors. We cook something. So our neighbors, we moved to the house we live in because of our neighbors. The wife and my wife were like best friends and college roommates. And they were like, hey, we have this house coming up for sale next to us. Why don't you buy it? So we bought it. So they have 3 kids. We have 3 kids. Our kids have all they're kind of the same ages, a few months apart here and there. And then we have some other neighbors that just kind of join in over time. And so typically on Friday nights, we're cooking something, whether it's, fried seafood or steaks or boiling something up, having a few drinks, watching whatever sporting events on TV. Sometimes it's just chilling out, hanging, talking about the week's events, what's coming up, and just enjoying company of friends. Sunday mornings, I don't know what an ideal Sunday morning is because I'm usually at some kind of event. We go to church if we can, but it's usually like soccer. Last weekend it was soccer, baseball. This weekend it'll probably be my daughter has dance competition, so we'll be at a dance competition. Um, so the ideal Sunday morning would just be one where I can wake up in my bed and not have to immediately leave my house.
I love to hear the soccer. I'm a very big soccer fan, but only very recently, because
Yeah.
my dad played college football, so
Okay.
he made us play football our whole lives. We weren't really allowed to play the European football, but
Uh-huh.
time went on. We sort of convinced him. My brother went to college. He started watching English soccer. He then brought
Yeah.
it to me, and now we brought it to my other brother, and now my dad. Even sometimes, actually, the other day, my brother caught my dad watching soccer in the town. So it was a big day. He texted me.
Yeah.
He's like, "You're never gonna imagine what I caught our father doing." Um,
I can watch like World Cup soccer. Um, that's pretty exciting, but just it's hard for me to sit down and watch a whole. Yeah, I'm just not. It's hard to not be connected to the teams and know who's good, who's bad. I don't follow it close enough to know all of that stuff. Um, but I do like going to youth games. My son played in high school. My younger son plays right now. It's fun to um, go to games. I also love coaching it. Um, it's a good sport to coach.
I hope to coach it one day myself. I only just play it, but I think when you play it, when you go out and experience it, I felt like I had a bigger appreciation for the sport because it is so hard. It is freakishly hard.
Yeah,
It took me a very long time to get a hang of it, and then once eventually I kind of did. I'm not like that great. I'm all right. I think I'm all
yeah,
right. But once I sort of got the hang of it, and one of my friends actually, he plays college soccer at Binghamton, and so
Okay.
training with him and working out with him and doing all the drills with him really helped me, and it just
Yeah.
showed me even more that like he's so good at soccer that I could
Yeah.
never be like that. But even when I see the professionals now, I'm like, these guys are like,
Yeah.
this is top shelf stuff.
There's some freak athletes, man. Like just the amount of running they have to do at full speed, that starting and stopping, the kicks that they can make, the way they can bend the ball, like that's crazy. It's
It
crazy.
it it really is, and I remember my first full field game that I played. It was that was a tough scene. That was a real tough scene. 'Cause I'm a lifelong basketball player. I thought that was a lot of running. I went to
Yeah.
soccer. I was like, oh, like what is? I played like lacrosse too, and that's kind of like soccer, not really, not as
Yeah.
running. But when I was on the field, first of all, dying. I'm dying. And then at
No
that point.
subs.
It's like we're like 45 minutes in. It's like I gotta
Yeah.
keep running. I gotta keep
Right.
chasing down this ball. But Lloyd, last question. Do this at the end of every episode. What are your words of wisdom for the aspiring law students, the current law students, and the legal professionals out there in the world?
Yeah. Just figure it out, man. It's not rocket science. Even if it was, we put a man on the moon. It can be done. Just I know you say there's no one pathway. There is no one pathway. There's figure it out. It take your own pathway and it'll work out in the end.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Lloyd, you took the words out of my mouth because that's all I talk about here. But you put it out even that just more that there is no straight path. There is only your unique path, and we're all gonna figure it out. In the end,
That's right.
we can all figure it out. But Lloyd,
Yeah.
that's the episode. That's the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on here, giving your wisdom, giving your experiences, and for everyone out there listening, thank you for tuning in. And check us out, lawyersinthemaking.substack.com. One word, lawyersinthemaking.substack.com. And I will see you in the next one.